Welcome back to Pakistan Zindabad, the next world superpower. Now that's a really bold claim, isn't it? And it's the premise of this, well, monumental strategic project we're diving into today.
It really is. And this isn't just some academic paper. We're talking 6 volumes, a blueprint.
Exactly. Detailing nothing less than the architecture for a new world superpower, all built around a Pakistan-led security framework. So for you listening, our mission here is pretty critical. We're giving you the ultimate shortcut through this massive, really complex, and let's be honest, politically ambitious project. It aims to completely redefine how global power is distributed.
And it's important we stayed up front. We're analyzing the content of this document. We're looking at the arguments it makes impartially, not, endorsing the viewpoints within it.
Absolutely. And the timing couldn't be more relevant, could it?
Not at all. This isn't just theory locked away somewhere. We just saw the signing of the Strategic Mutual Defense Agreement between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia.
Right. The pact that says an attack on one is an attack on both.
Precisely. That's a huge step. It fundamentally changes the relationship from just partners to, well, allies focused on collective survival.
And that agreement, as the sources you gave us detail, is actually cited in this blueprint. They call it the first brick.
The very first brick, laid in this enormous new geopolitical structure they're proposing.
So that really sets up our core task for this deep dive, doesn't it? We need to unpack the central argument of this whole 6-volume series.
Which is?
How does a region or a specific state move beyond just counting its population or its GDP?
The usual metrics of power.
Exactly. And so strategically applying what the author calls architectural weight to achieve, well, irreversible geopolitical dominance.
Architectural weight. That's the key concept.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, to really grasp the sheer scale of this, you need to know a bit about the source. The blueprint is the work of Zaheer Ahmad Meer.
A constitutional and corporate lawyer, the notes say.
That's right. And what he's done is synthesize legal thinking, religious texts, military strategy, economic theory. It's incredibly broad.
And the time frame, 6 volumes, finished March 2025.
Completed then, yes. And it lays out a very specific plan. It starts with prophetic precedent, believe it or not, and goes all the way to concrete implementation steps for 2030.
So the core claim really, it challenges everything you read in standard international relations textbooks, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. It throws out the conventional wisdom that power is just, GDP plus population plus resources.
It flips the script.
It does. Meer's central argument, and it is provocative, is that population does not equal power. Simple as that.
So mass population, it's just potential.
Exactly. Like crude oil, still underground, it's potential energy. But true strategic weight, the kind that turns that potential into real, usable geopolitical force that depends on a very specific set of criteria.
The engineering specifications you mentioned.
That's the term he uses. Things like institutions, doctrine, technology, leadership, training. And this is crucial in his framework, Faye.
All 6 are needed.
You need all 6 working together to convert that raw mass into strategic leverage, into that architectural weight that can actually withstand pressure.
Okay, so that distinction, mass versus architectural weight, that brings us to the foundational logic of the whole thing. And it's fascinating because it's not just drawing from modern military thinking. It goes way back to spiritual and historical texts.
It does. This idea of quality over quantity isn't just a preference. It's presented as a fundamental, almost a non-negotiable design principle if you want to succeed in conflict.
So it's like a template.
Yeah.
Morally and operationally.
You could say that. The blueprint connects strategic success to what it calls divine sanction. But, and this is important, it's not passive. It's not fate.
It has to be earned.
It has to be actively earned. It needs to be coupled with really concrete things, disciplined preparation, and a sustained, unified spiritual will to overcome the odds, especially numerical odds.
So the spiritual aspect is actually an instruction to build quality, not just wait for a miracle.
Precisely. Build quality. Don't just rely on having bigger numbers.
And the blueprint actually grounds this logic in specific verses from the Quran, right? Which then sets the stage for the military analysis later.
Yes, 2 verses are central. The first is from Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 2.249. It relates to the story of Talut, or Saul, versus Jalut, Goliath.
And the core message there.
The verse asks, essentially, how many a small company has overcome a large company by permission of Allah. It establishes that historical, even divine, precedent for smaller, better forces winning. Asymmetric victory based on quality.
And the second one?
That's Surah Al-Imran, verse 3.123, referencing the Battle of Badr. The point there is that even when divine help is present, you still need unity, organization, discipline, adherence to command.
So again, not fatalism. It's framed as a strict design principle.
Absolutely. Build operational quality, embed real doctrinal unity, maintain constant readiness. If you do those things, the blueprint argues, strategic outcomes will consistently favor you regardless of how much bigger the other side is.
And the argument is, this isn't just something found in Islamic history. It's a universal principle.
That's the claim. That history, across cultures, across time, validates this logic. Quality consistently trumps quantity when the conditions are right.
Okay. What's fascinating here is how the blueprint then takes these, let's call them spiritual design principles, and connects them directly to military history from all over the world.
Right. They pull in a really wide range of examples to show this quality over quantity thing isn't an anomaly. It's presented as a universal principle of conflict engineering, you could say.
Conflict engineering,
Oh,
interesting term.
It allows them to argue that the framework they're proposing isn't just aspirational. It's built on what they see as proven, repeatable laws of strategic success.
So what kind of examples are we talking about? You said they're diverse.
Incredibly diverse, they form the sort of empirical backbone of the argument. They start, naturally, with key Islamic victories where smaller forces beat huge empires.
Like Badr.
Badr, Uhud, Khandak, Al-Qadisiyah, Yarmouk against the Persians and Byzantines, even Anjalut against the Mongols. Cases where organization and motivation overcame numbers.
But then they pivot globally.
Crucially, yes, to show the principle is universal. They bring in Thermopylae and Marathon the Greeks using discipline, terrain, the phalanx doctrine against much larger Persian forces.
Okay.
Then there's the Finnish Winter War. Tiny Finland stopping the Soviet advance not with manpower, but with better tactics, terrain knowledge, morale, guerrilla warfare, basically.
And more modern examples.
Vietnam, certainly.
Yeah.
And the early stages of the Cuban Revolution, again, political will, doctrinal asymmetry beating overwhelming material strength.
So these aren't just stories. They're using them like case studies in a lab.
Pretty much. To distill what they call the 5 repeating factors, these are the engineering specs they believe are needed to consistently turn national mass population resources into actual usable strategic weight.
Into architectural weight.
Exactly. That's the definition.
And these 5 factors, they're like a checklist
Yeah.
for the proposed alliance.
That's how it functions in the text. Yes, they are. 1, leadership excellence. Not just charisma, but a high-quality, ethically grounded command structure that can make tough decisions under pressure.
Okay.
2, technological asymmetry. This is vital. It's not about matching the enemy tank for tank. It's about using specific advanced niche technologies like EW, cyber precision weapons, to create an imbalance locally that cancels out the enemy's numbers.
Makes sense. What's 3?
Doctrinal innovation. Developing fighting concepts that are just better than the enemy's, finding their rigidities and exploiting them with things like maneuver warfare or integrated defense across domains.
Yeah.
Superior organization and training. This is about turning raw recruits into disciplined, effective units. Standardized training, good logistics, the basic but essential institutional quality.
And the last one, number 5.
Moral cohesion and ideology. The belief system. What binds the force together, sustains their will to fight, makes the cost bearable, ensures they bounce back from setbacks.
So these 5...
What's fascinating here is the blueprint suggests that if you score highly on all 5, they act like a strategic multiplier. They automatically give you that architectural weight you need for regional dominance, almost regardless of your census numbers or your GDP.
Okay, so if that's the universal template, the 5 factors needed for architectural weight, the next obvious question the blueprint tackles is, why Pakistan?
Right. Why should Pakistan lead this massive multinational security framework? Why put the Supreme Allied Command there?
And the answer starts with its existing capabilities, its hard power, that demonstrates it already has mastery over those 5 factors.
Absolutely. The foundation, you can't deny it, is the nation's mature nuclear deterrent. The blueprint really emphasizes Pakistan's long track record in maintaining a credible nuclear triad.
And that's key because
it's the ultimate equalizer. It takes large-scale conventional invasion off the table. It forces any adversary, even a much larger one, into limited asymmetric conflicts, exactly the kind of conflict where Pakistan has spent decades developing specific expertise.
So successfully maintaining that deterrent, often under intense global pressure, allows them to leverage their operational doctrine.
Precisely. Which is asymmetric equalization.
Hmm.
And this isn't just military jargon, it's become a national doctrine forged by decades of facing a larger, wealthier neighbor. They understand fundamentally how to get the biggest bang for their buck, how to use niche advantages effectively.
And there's a political dimension too, right, for leading a coalition.
Hugely important. The tradition of strategic autonomy under pressure. Pakistan, historically, has navigated very tricky geopolitical waters, the Cold War, post 9/11, without completely bending to the agendas of the major external powers.
And that independence is presented as a key qualification.
As vital, yes, for leading a security bloc whose whole purpose is to establish principled autonomy from precisely that kind of external influence.
But the blueprint doesn't just focus on military stuff, does it? It talks about non-military assets contributing to this strategic weight.
No, it's broader than just military hardware. And arguably, these non-military factors are just as critical for actually holding together an alliance of diverse nations.
Like what?
Well, first, simple geography. Geographic centrality. Pakistan sits right at the crossroads connecting the Middle East, Central Asia, and South Asia. That position is key for future trade, energy flows, communications.
Okay.
Second, its established intelligence edge. Decades of experience in collection, counterintelligence, and critically important in modern conflict information operations, info ops.
Which is basically narrative control, perception management.
Just sophisticated versions of that, yes. Shaping the information environment is crucial.
They're fact.
Third, and this is core to the unity aspect, the nation's Islamic identity. The blueprint presents this as the bedrock unifying factor for the alliance. But it makes a point of emphasizing sectarian inclusivity, which is necessary if you want to bring in nations from across the diverse Muslim world.
Right, that makes sense. And finally,
The strategic anchor, the ironclad axis with China. This is presented as providing essential tech transfer, economic depth for resilience, and a crucial geopolitical counterweight needed while the framework is being built up during its most vulnerable phase.
so to really hammer home this idea of strategic weight beating sheer numbers, the blueprint actually uses a detailed scenario.
Yes, a hypothetical but very specific one. They walk through a high-stakes crisis scenario set in May 2025. It involves a fictional Indian military action called Operation Sindoor.
And how is that operation depicted?
As a large-scale but limited military engagement designed to apply intense pressure to coerce Pakistan into making concessions. High intensity but geographically contained.
And the blueprint details Pakistan's response.
In significant detail. And the key point is the response isn't about matching India tank for tank or plane for plane. It doesn't try to meet mass with mass.
So how does it work?
It focuses on a sophisticated application of those 5 factors we talked about. Intense electronic warfare, EW, to blind the adversary's command and control, their C4ISR systems.
Disrupting their eyes and ears.
Exactly. Then, precision kinetic strikes hitting high-value targets, like command centers, not just frontline troops. And underpinning it all, a highly integrated air defense system using networked data links to coordinate everything.
So the scenario is used to demonstrate how the asymmetric equalization doctrine works in practice.
Precisely. The argument made in the blueprint is that even if the adversary in this scenario had 5 times the resources, they lost decision superiority almost immediately because of the combined effect of EW and precision targeting.
They couldn't react effectively.
Right. The operational result, as the blueprint presents it, allegedly challenged the myth of numerical supremacy. It proved, in this hypothetical, that the quality of doctrine and technology could make sheer mass almost irrelevant in achieving objectives.
And the takeaway is meant to be.
If one state, operating under constraints, can achieve this kind of equalization, then imagine what a unified alliance built around these same principles could do. It could amplify that effect exponentially, achieving dominance on a regional, even global scale.
That's a powerful illustration of the concept, but let me push back a bit here, play devil's advocate.
Okay.
The blueprint says Pakistan is the natural leader because of its strategic autonomy and these capabilities. But leading a huge multinational bloc like this requires immense diplomatic effort, not to mention financial resources. How does the blueprint square Pakistan's own well-known internal economic challenges with the massive burden of actually leading this 2030 architecture?
That's a really critical question, and the blueprint doesn't ignore it. It addresses it by framing Pakistan's leadership role as primarily strategic, not financial. It's the architectural guarantor.
Meaning its value isn't measured in dollars.
Not primarily, no. Its value is in those specific forms of strategic weight we discussed. The nuclear shield, the proven asymmetric doctrine, the intelligence maturity, the geographic position. The argument is that these non-economic assets are the most valuable commodities when you're trying to build a collective security structure designed specifically to resist external interference and maintain autonomy.
So who pays for it all?
The heavy financing, as we'll get into later, is designed to be shared. It relies on collective economic mechanisms, specifically designed to spread the burden and, importantly, to offset the host nation's financial load. Pakistan provides the strategic backbone. The financing is a collective responsibility.
Okay, let's shift to timing. This isn't just abstract theorizing or historical analysis. The blueprint presents itself as a time-sensitive roadmap. Why 2025? Why is that year identified as this critical hinge moment? Why the urgency to start forming this alliance now, beginning with that Saudi pact?
Yeah, the sense of urgency is palpable in the text. It's portrayed as a convergence point, a sort of perfect storm of accelerating threats combined with rapidly closing windows of opportunity.
What kind of threats?
Well, several converging pressures are forcing the issue, making collective organization seem essential. One is the ongoing geopolitical pressure from the expansion of the Abraham Accords.
How does that create urgency?
It forces regional nations into a choice, basically. Either align with those established U.S.-backed security arrangements or take the much harder, more expensive path towards genuine, principled security autonomy. The blueprint argues that if you don't actively choose autonomy now, you default into dependence on external agendas. Inaction becomes submission.
And there's a bigger global picture, too.
Absolutely. The accelerating great power competition, primarily between the U.S. and China, this dramatically increases the risk for smaller or medium regional states of just becoming proxy battlegrounds.
Pawns in someone else's game.
Exactly. Their territory, their resources, even their militaries get exploited for external strategic goals. The blueprint argues that organizing collectively is the only way to avoid that fate, to maintain agency.
And technology plays a role in this urgency.
Critically so. The tech gaps are widening incredibly fast. We're talking AI, cyber warfare capabilities, space-based assets, hypersonics.
Things developing at lightning speed.
Right. And the argument is, if regional powers don't start integrating their efforts immediately, joint R&D, joint production, the window to achieve indigenous technological sovereignty will close completely, maybe by 2030. After that, it's permanent dependence on external suppliers for critical defense tech.
And the blueprint also points fingers at existing institutions, saying they're not up to the task.
Explicitly, yes. It spends quite a bit of time discussing the limitations of bodies like the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation.
What's the critique there?
While acknowledging the OIC's value as a political, diplomatic, and cultural forum, which is significant, it argues the OIC fundamentally lacks two things needed for 21st century threats. First, a real operational mandate, and second, a binding collective defense clause.
So it's not built for hard security.
The blueprint's analogy is harsh, but clear. Relying on the OIC for hard security in the current environment is like bringing a debating club to a firefight. A new entity designed for operational reality is needed.
Which brings us back to that real-world event, the live proof, as the text calls it.
The Pak-Saudi Mutual Defense Pact. Yes, this isn't just presented as routine diplomacy. The blueprint frames it unequivocally as the foundational first brick of this whole new indigenous security architecture.
The first concrete step.
Absolutely key. It was picked up by outlets like the Financial Times. This pact formalizes that joint response, attack on one, attack on all. That's a massive political statement. It instantly accelerates force integration, shared training, planning.
It moves the relationship beyond conditional support
to immediate mandatory intervention in a crisis. That level of commitment is profound.
Okay, but let's address the elephant in the room. Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, has very deep, long-standing security relationships with Western powers, particularly the U.S. How does the blueprint reconcile signing this pact, supposedly the first brick of an autonomous architecture, with those existing ties? Isn't that a contradiction?
The blueprint doesn't shy away from that complexity. It tackles it directly. It positions this initial bilateral pact as essentially a proof of concept.
Testing the waters.
In a way, yes. Demonstrating the operational and, crucially, the political viability of this Article 5 type commitment within the region. The argument is that you start with this core bilateral relationship between two states with significant existing military cooperation, common equipment, shared training protocols to build foundational stability and establish technical standards.
So it's a starting point, not the end goal.
Exactly. You build the core capabilities and demonstrate the political will within this Pact-Saudi framework first. Then, the plan is to scale it up, bringing in other nations, gradually internalizing and indigenizing the security infrastructure over time. The aim isn't necessarily to sever existing ties overnight, but to progressively reduce reliance on external security guarantees by building collective internal capability.
That makes sense as a phased approach. Now, beyond military threats, the blueprint also highlights economic coercion as a major driver for this pact and the larger architecture, right?
Yes, a huge driver. This is about the non-military threats that are increasingly potent. We're talking targeted sanctions, disrupting supply chains, weaponizing access to the global financial system.
Using economic tools for strategic ends.
Precisely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the argument is that the only truly effective defense against modern economic warfare is collective economic resilience.
One state alone can't withstand it.
Even a wealthy state can be pressured, isolated, forced into concessions if its financial lifelines are threatened or cut off. So the proposed alliance must build its own internal, sophisticated mechanisms, which we'll detail in a moment, to insulate its members from that kind of external financial pressure. The strategic pact has to be economic as well as military to be truly effective and autonomous.
All right, so we've covered the why and the why now. Let's get into the how. This is where the 6 volumes really lay out the structural design of the proposed framework. It's organized around 7 pillars, is that right?
7 pillars, yes. Each designed to address a specific layer of security needed to transform that regional potential we talked about into real, hard, recognized strategic power by the 2030 target.
So these pillars form the complete plan.
Pretty much the whole architectural plan, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Covering everything from the legal basis to the military structure to the financial underpinning.
Okay, let's walk through them. Pillar number 1.
Pillar 1 is the absolute foundation, the Collective Defense Treaty. This is where they explicitly call for a core Muslim Article 5 principle.
Like NATO's Article 5.
Exactly like that. A legally binding commitment. An attack on one member state is considered an attack on all member states. Mandatory mutual defense.
Pillar 2.
The extended nuclear umbrella. This is designed to provide nuclear deterrence protection to allied states without actually proliferating nuclear weapons technology to them.
How does that work? We should come back to that. Pillar 3.
Joint military commands. This involves setting up integrated regional and functional commands, but, and this is critical for buy-in, using very carefully defined, sovereignty-respecting decision-making rules.
Because multinational commands can easily step on national toes.
Always a risk. They can slow things down, create political friction. So the blueprint apparently outlines specific legal protocols to balance speed and integration with national sovereignty.
Okay, pillar 4.
Defense industrial cooperation. This is huge. Focused on joint research and development, shared production lines, standardizing equipment across the alliance. The explicit goal here is to eventually eliminate technological dependence on outside powers.
Building their own stuff. Makes sense. Pillar 5.
Intelligence integration. Setting up dedicated fusion centers where member states can securely share critical intelligence. Essential for any kind of preemptive action or effective counterterrorism and counterintelligence across the region.
Pillar 6 sounds like it addresses that economic coercion point.
It does directly. Economic security mechanisms. This pillar details the tools needed for resilience against sanctions, mechanisms for providing emergency liquidity to members in crisis, and crucially, developing alternative payment systems to bypass financial choke points controlled by potential adversaries.
And the 7th pillar sounds quite unique.
It is sacred sites protection. This involves creating specialized legal frameworks and dedicated operational military security units specifically tasked with defending key religious and cultural sites.
Why is that singled out?
It highlights the ideological and unifying dimension of the proposed alliance. Protecting shared heritage becomes a core, tangible mission, reinforcing the unity of hearts and minds idea.
Let's circle back to Pillar 2, the extended nuclear umbrella. That sounds challenging to implement credibly. How does the blueprint propose Pakistan offers a believable nuclear guarantee to allies without giving them the bomb or sharing control codes? The credibility of that deterrent threat is everything.
It's definitely a point requiring doctrinal sophistication. The blueprint argues credibility comes from the deep integration of delivery systems and a unified response doctrine, not from proliferation itself.
So how is the umbrella extended in practice?
Through several mechanisms working together. First, a crystal clear, legally binding commitment in the treaty itself. Aggression against any member triggers a potential nuclear response from Pakistan. No ambiguity.
Okay, the legal guarantee.
Second, establishing secure, redundant command and control C2 systems directly linking the leadership of allied nations to Pakistan's nuclear command authority. This ensures instantaneous, reliable communication during the absolute worst-case crisis scenario.
So they're looped in.
They're looped into the decision-making process at the highest level, ensuring consultation and potentially joint authorization depending on the pre-agreed protocols. Third, and very visibly, hosting Pakistani conventional forces and advanced delivery systems like missile batteries, air assets on Allied soil. These forward-deployed assets would be explicitly protected by the nuclear shield.
Showing capability and resolve right there.
Exactly. It demonstrates credible forward deployment and the will to use the deterrent to protect Allies' territory directly. So deterrence is maintained through the guaranteed certainty of a rapid, potentially nuclear retaliation, regardless of who initiates the aggression against a member state.
Okay, that clarifies the mechanism. Now, to make all this operational, the blueprint must go into the nitty-gritty details, right? You mentioned chapters 39 and 40.
Yes, they provide spotlights on the mechanics. Chapter 39 focuses on the treaty and its legal foundations.
What's the key takeaway there?
The emphasis is on legal resilience, making the alliance robust and defensible. It details the exact wording of the Collective Defense Clause, accession processes for new members, compliance mechanisms, even sophisticated dispute resolution procedures within the alliance.
And making it compatible with international law.
Critically, yes. It details how the entire treaty aligns with and explicitly cites the UN Charter, particularly regarding collective self-defense. This makes the alliance legally justifiable on the world stage. And again, the authors stress that getting the Pax-Saudi Pact signed, with its attack on one, attack on both clause, proves the necessary political appetite already exists. It shows this can scale from bilateral to multilateral.
So chapter 39 is the legal bedrock. What about chapter 40?
Chapter 40 gets into the operational command and headquarters system. This defines the actual physical structure and the command hierarchy for the whole collective security framework.
How's it structured?
It's designed for centralized strategic direction, but decentralized tactical execution. The nerve center, the Supreme Allied Command, will be headquartered in Pakistan. That's the main C2 node, the strategic planning hub.
And beneath that?
A network of regional HQs covering key strategic zones. The blueprint specifies a Gulf Command, a South Asia Command, a Central Asia Command, and also a dedicated M&A Command, Middle East and North Africa.
So for this complex multinational military structure to actually function smoothly, especially given how fast modern warfare moves.
Yeah, you need more than just HQs on a map. The blueprint identifies 3 absolutely essential technical goals. Without these, you don't get genuine architectural weight. You just have a collection of different armies who happen to be allies.
What are the 3?
First, common rules of engagement, ROE. All allied forces need to operate under the same basic guidelines for when and how they can use force. Absolutely critical to avoid confusion or friendly fire in joint operations.
Makes sense.
Second, a secure, fully integrated joint command and control C2 grid. This isn't just about radios. It's a hardened digital network allowing commanders at every level from the Supreme HQ down to units in the field to communicate securely, share real-time sensor data, and issue orders instantly, even while under heavy cyber or electronic attack.
The digital backbone. And third?
This is often called the gold standard of military alliances, plug-and-fight interoperability.
Okay, plug and fight. That sounds technical. Can you break that down for us for the listener? What does that mean in practical terms according to the blueprint?
It means, for example, that a squadron of fighter jets from, say, country A can land at an airbase in allied country B, refuel using country B's systems, rearm with compatible munitions, and immediately integrate its data link into country B's local air defense network and the overall joint operational plan.
Without needing days or weeks of technical adjustments or bringing all their own unique support gear.
Exactly. It's the ability for forces from different nations, often using different equipment, to deploy quickly and seamlessly integrate into joint operations with minimal friction. It's a massive technical and logistical challenge.
And how's that being addressed initially?
The blueprint suggests the Pac-Saudi Pact is the test bed for this, establishing things like permanent liaison billets within the Gulf Command structure, conducting joint training cycles focused on specific shared threats like energy corridor protection, as reportedly mentioned in outlets like Arab News. You start building that interoperability muscle bilaterally first.
This is incredibly comprehensive, almost breathtakingly ambitious. But any plan this big is going to face enormous challenges, both geopolitical and internal.
Oh, absolutely. And the blueprint doesn't pretend otherwise. It actually dedicates significant sections to identifying these hurdles. But importantly, it frames them not as showstoppers, but as structured problems that the proposed framework, with its specific mechanisms, is designed to solve.
So it anticipates the problems and builds in solutions.
That's the approach. It outlines 6 critical challenges that the framework must address simultaneously to ensure its long-term survival and effectiveness. These are the threats that necessitate collective action in the first place.
Okay, what are these 6 challenges?
The first 2 are major geopolitical flashpoints. Number 1. Territorial occupation and disputes. It specifically cites long-standing issues like Palestine and Kashmir as not just political problems, but as the moral and strategic drivers that demand regional unity.
And the second challenge?
Deterring external interventions. This covers the spectrum from overt military actions like airstrikes or border incursions, all the way to more subtle but equally damaging forms of lawfare.
Lawfare. That term needs a bit more explanation, I think.
Right. It's essentially the strategic use of legal processes, domestic courts, international tribunals, sanctions regimes, financial regulations to harass, delegitimize, financially cripple, or otherwise neutralize an opponent. It's using the law as a weapon to achieve political goals that military force might not be able to or might be too costly for.
So the alliance needs a collective defense against lawsuits and sanctions too.
Exactly. A collective legal and financial shield is deemed essential.
Okay, challenge number 3.
Economic coercion. We touched on this. How to collectively resist external sanctions, politically motivated supply chain disruptions, financial blockades.
Number 4.
Overcoming chronic technological dependence. Breaking free from reliance on Western or Eastern tech suppliers by investing collectively in sovereign R&D, protecting intellectual property, and building shared testing facilities within the alliance.
5th.
The protection of sacred sites and shared cultural heritage. This requires not just political statements, but dedicated force protection units and clear legal mandates recognized by all members.
And the 6th challenge.
Solving strategic fragmentation. This is about moving beyond the limitations of the current OIC structure. It means transitioning from political declarations to an actually operational alliance, primarily by implementing that core collective defense treaty we discussed.
And you said the blueprint proposes specific solutions for each of these.
Yes, for each identified challenge, there's a corresponding institutional mechanism proposed, often detailed in specific chapter clusters. For instance, to address the sacred sites issue, it mandates creating a dedicated sacred sites protection force, trained specifically for heritage defense in conflict zones.
And for economic coercion.
It proposes tools like issuing collective Islamic defense sukuk, those asset-backed bonds, to raise funds independently. For tech dependence, it calls for a collective cyber defense center operating under the Supreme Allied Command, pooling resources and talent.
Okay, so the structure is designed to tackle the anticipated problems. But implementing something this vast must be carefully sequenced, right? You can't just flip a switch in 2025.
No, definitely not. And the blueprint acknowledges that by providing a pretty concrete implementation roadmap, it lays out phases stretching from 2025 all the way through 2030, designed to show a plausible path from concept to reality, both politically and technically.
Can you walk us through those phases? How does it start?
It starts, as you'd expect, with diplomacy and groundwork. Phase 1 is 2025-2026. This is all about foundational work.
Like what?
Intensive outreach to potential coordination partners, developing detailed concept notes, explaining the benefits and obligations, working to secure initial political buy-in behind the scenes. It also involves moving the discussion from informal, track 2 dialogues involving academics, former officials, think tanks to formal, track I government to government negotiations.
And the Saudi Pact is the catalyst for this phase.
It's presented as the immediate kickstart, yes. Proving the concept is viable and generating momentum.
Okay, after the initial diplomacy.
Phase 2, running through 2026-2027, is the critical legal phase. This is where political agreement gets turned into hard international law.
So drafting the treaty.
Exactly. Finalizing the detailed text of the Collective Defense Treaty, conducting rigorous legal reviews within each participating nation to ensure it aligns with their own constitutions and laws, and then the big moment, the formal signatures, and crucially, the subsequent parliamentary ratifications needed to bring the treaty legally into force.
A complex process.
Yeah.
And once it's legally binding.
Then the operational phase begins immediately to build the actual physical and technical capabilities. Phase 3 covers 2027-2028.
What happens then?
This is about establishing the physical and technical backbone, activating the main Supreme HQ in Pakistan, setting up the various regional HQs in places like the Gulf and potentially elsewhere, and achieving what they call IOC initial operational capability.
What does IOC mean in this context?
The blueprint defines it specifically. IOC means having, at a minimum, secure intelligence sharing platforms up and running between core members, common communications protocols established, and designated rapid reaction forces from member states ready for joint deployment. Basic operational readiness.
Leading to the final stage.
Right. Phase 4, from 2028 to 2030, aims for FOC full operational capability. This is the most complex phase.
What does FOC involve?
It involves achieving that deep interoperability. We talked about standardizing procedures and tech across all branches: air, land, sea, cyber, space. It means conducting progressively larger and more complex joint military exercises to test and refine capabilities. And finally, making a public, undeniable demonstration of the alliance's combined military and economic capabilities, a demonstration aimed squarely at deterring any potential external aggression.
It's a hugely ambitious timeline. Now, funding. An architecture this large, designed specifically to counter global economic coercion. How do they propose paying for it? Using traditional Western loans or institutions seems counterproductive, right? It would expose the alliance to the very leverage it seeks to avoid.
Absolutely. That's why the blueprint proposes relying heavily on innovative Islamic finance mechanisms. The goal is to create a financial base that is inherently more resilient to external pressure than conventional debt models.
So not borrowing in dollars or euros necessarily.
Primarily seeking alternatives. The core proposal involves issuing defense sukuk. These are essentially Islamic bonds, but instead of being based on interest payments, which is forbidden, riba, they represent ownership shares in specific underlying assets or projects. Returns are generated from the performance of those assets.
Okay, Suk, what else?
It also suggests utilizing Waqf endowments. These are traditional Islamic charitable trusts, often holding assets in perpetuity. They could provide a stable, long-term source of capital independent of market fluctuations. And also implementing takaful, which is a cooperative, Sharia-compliant insurance model for sharing risks and protecting the alliance's collective assets.
And how is the burden shared among members?
This collective financing approach is key because while the instruments, sukuk waqf, are designed for resilience, the actual burden sharing is proposed to be calculated based on each member state's GDP.
So bigger economies contribute more proportionally.
That's the principle. But crucially, the financing mechanism itself, raising funds via sukuk rather than traditional Western bonds, is inherently less vulnerable to external manipulation through interest rate hikes or targeted financial sanctions. It's an attempt to build financial resilience right into the foundations of the alliance structure itself. #outro.
Well, we have certainly covered a huge amount of ground today. We've gone from the initial, very bold claim in Zaheer Ahmad Meer's conceptual blueprint.
It's volumes of it.
6 volumes, yes.
Yeah.
All the way through the detailed 7 pillars, the operational concepts, the challenges, and that phased implementation roadmap stretching from 2025 out to 2030. We've really tried to synthesize that core argument. The journey from just counting population or GDP to consciously, deliberately building strategic architecture.
And the central insight, the intellectual anchor drawn from that historical and spiritual analysis, it really stays with you, doesn't it? That strategic power isn't just something you have because you're big. It has to be cultivated.
Through discipline, quality, superior organization, doctrinal innovation.
Exactly. It's all about converting that raw potential demographic mass, economic size, into real, usable architectural weight that can actually exert leverage on the world stage.
And what makes this deep dive feel so immediate, so relevant right now, is that connection back to present reality, that Pak-Saudi Defense Pact.
The first brick.
The first brick, signed, sealed, delivered. It really does suggest that this specific architecture, or something very much like it, isn't just a long-term fantasy on paper. It seems to be forming in some capacity right now, as we speak.
It does lend a certain weight to the blueprint's claims. Now, If we loop back one last time to that opening Quranic quote you mentioned, 2.249, how many a small company has overcome a large company? The whole narrative is about overcoming physical strength with faith, preparation, quality.
Hmm.
However, the blueprint, while laying out this incredibly detailed plan, also implicitly points towards a final challenge, one that goes beyond logistics or finance or even achieving that plug-and-fight interoperability.
What's that?
The real obstacle, perhaps, to sustaining this kind of doctrinal rigor and institutional weight over the long haul, it might not be military hardware or GDP figures or treaty clauses.
This raises an important question, doesn't it? How do the relentless demands of modern technological asymmetry, the constant costly race for hypersonics, for AI dominance, for sophisticated cyber tools, how does that intense technological pressure conflict with, or maybe align with, the historical and spiritual factors that supposedly underpin this whole strategic vision?
Can that deep reliance on cutting-edge, often externally sourced or inspired technology truly coexist in the long run with the stated goal of ultimate strategic and spiritual autonomy? It's a tension at the heart of the project.
A fundamental tension.
Ultimately, the success or failure of this 2030 vision might hinge less on the technical details and more on that intangible factor we mentioned right at the start, achieving the genuine unity of hearts and minds across diverse nations. That's what's needed to sustain the doctrine, the financial commitments, the institutional discipline, especially when facing sustained external pressure or inevitable internal friction.
So the final message is,
Stop counting heads. Unite hearts and minds.